So, we have talked about thoughts as facts and beliefs. Um, we've talked about that it is natural for the mind to think and that we are not meditating in order to get rid of our thoughts. So, thoughts are a part of everyone's human experience. You don't need to push them away to practice. Learning to bring your mind back from its thoughts and into the present is the practice. But how do you let go of the thoughts once they've pulled you in without pushing the thoughts away or denying their presence? You can be aware of the thinking mind while remaining unattached. Some of us have difficulty being objective or non reactive about thoughts. We have a thought, we react to it, and it all happens in a split second. It's sometimes useful to put distance between yourself and the thoughts by acknowledging them and your reactions to them. It's like taking a couple of steps back until you're more mentally detached from the thought. It's almost like you must think of yourself as an observer. You're observing what you're thinking. So, as an example, let's just say the idea of X, whatever X is, pops into your mind. And your reaction to it is that you get angry. So, this might be an example of your internal dialogue. I'm so angry that X happened, and I'm having a thought about X. I'm feeling this way about X. I'm feeling this way about a thought. I'm having a feeling about a thought. I actually recognize that I'm having a feeling about a thought. So you strip away all the specifics about X, about this thing that happened, and you're aware of a thought and a feeling. There's nothing personal anymore about X. And it's okay if you didn't completely follow that or completely understand that. It's a lot of words, actually. It's an inner dialogue that happens quickly, and it's best understood by experiencing it, like so many of these explanations are. Just continue to follow, and you'll be surprised how much of this information will come back to you in hindsight. The more we practice, the more we become familiar with being aware of our thoughts. And so it starts to become second nature. And that's a defining moment. The psychological benefit is profound. Sure, there's life still happens and things will still distract us. But when our default is to be aware of what our thoughts are, we're more balanced, psychologically healthier, and very much less at the mercy of them. You're using your mindfulness to train the mind to be the observer of your thoughts. I can't say that enough. You're the observer. Some thoughts are tougher than others. They almost seem like they are in disguise, so you don't even recognize them as thoughts when they come into your consciousness. Especially thoughts like, I'll never be able to do this, or this is not doing me any good, or this is actually making things worse. Thoughts can be so well camouflaged against the background of intense feelings that they get caught up in the reactions of not wanting to have those feelings. But with time and with the slowing down process of meditation, you'll start to notice these subtle thoughts more and more, and naturally they will begin to unravel on their own as you give them less and less energy. This takes time and awareness, and it's okay. It does not make perfect sense to you if it doesn't make perfect sense to you yet, or if it takes some time for you to experience it. Keep working at being aware of what has taken you away. What thoughts are you lost in? A thought is not a fact. A thought is just a thought. And that's something that Jon Kabat-Zinn said. He's a professor of medicine a meditation teacher and an author. And he's also responsible for creating something called the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program. And it's a program that's been extensively studied scientifically. It's an incredible program. And if any of you ever have the opportunity to take it, or if you're interested, I'll be happy to give you some recommendations of where you can find it. It specifically works with stress in meditation. But when we have a thought, many times it can condense into a belief. And a belief is just a thought or thoughts that you have come up over and over again. Beliefs can then be taken as facts. When we start to pay attention to our thoughts with a gentle curiosity, then we start to think about thinking, and we move away from believing that the thought is a fact. When I first heard the phrase, "don't believe everything you think," it was a little surreal. I didn't realize that I let myself believe a lot of thoughts as facts. It took me a while before I became conscious of my thoughts and conscious that I was thinking my thoughts. We all have upsetting thoughts that we wish we didn't have. And it's natural to want to control these upsetting thoughts and stop them from coming. We do this in several ways. For example, we tell ourselves to stop thinking about something, or we dismiss thoughts by saying, "That's silly, I'm being ridiculous." Sometimes we distract ourselves and get busy with something else, or we tell ourselves positive things to feel better, like it'll all work out for the best. Unfortunately, most people have not found that thought control strategies are very helpful. Numerous scientific studies have shown that the more we try to get rid of unwanted thoughts, the more these thoughts stick and increase in frequency and intensity. So trying to control a thought is a lot like trying to keep a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more it resists and wants to come up to the surface. So instead of trying to control, reason with, or react to thoughts, let them enter and leave your mind freely without engaging them or getting attached to them. An important note, letting go of your thoughts is not the same as ignoring or pushing your thoughts away. You're recognizing and acknowledging your thoughts for what they are rather than avoiding them. So just very briefly, I want to try something with you. So if you'll close your eyes, or you can just lower your gaze if that feels more comfortable. And I want you to start following your breath, just noticing your breathing in and out. Now I want you to allow yourself to notice any thoughts that come into your head as you're aware of your breathing. See if you can pay attention to and accept these thoughts without judgment, if you possibly can. Thoughts are really not bad or good or positive or negative. They just are what they are. It's just the thought that you happen to be having at this particular moment. You might become aware that you're having difficulty thinking about your thoughts. So think about that. You may be thinking, "I can't do this very well." Well, that's a thought too, and allow yourself to think about that. Just allow the thoughts to float like leaves on a stream or clouds in a sky. Notice each passing thought, and then the one that comes after that, and then the one that comes after that. You may even notice that just at the moment you become aware of a thought, it passes and is replaced by another thought. And that's just what happens. Thoughts come and they go. Now bring yourself back to the awareness of the breath. Just notice breathing in and breathing out. And you can open your eyes whenever you're ready. So now that you're beginning to see what it's like to observe your thoughts, let's explore another way, a different way that you can work with your thoughts to put them into useful action. For instance, you may not be able to change a stressful situation, but you may be able to change the way you feel. So mindfulness of current thoughts can help you accept your distress to decrease your suffering. So mindfulness of current thoughts. To practice this, you might observe your thoughts. They're merely waves coming and going. You don't have to judge or analyze them. Let them float along out of your mind. Don't cling to them. Acknowledge their presence and move on. You might also remember that you're not your thoughts. Do not automatically act on your thoughts. Another thing you can do is don't suppress them. Don't avoid your thoughts. Imagine things you would do if you stop believing everything you think, if you acknowledge your thoughts are not facts. So here's a simple analogy that might explain this just a little bit differently, but more clearly. Imagine watching a horror movie alone at home with the lights off. If you've done this, you know that you're engulfed by the movie. The movie basically owns you. It's terrifying and it's all you're aware of. And so it has complete control over your emotions. Now contrast that with watching the movie alone at home, but this time with the lights on. It's the same movie, you're still alone, but with the lights on, you have more context. You can see that the movie is playing on a TV. You can see other things in the room that remind you you're at home watching a movie. It's still scary, but it's not as bad as with the lights off because you have a bit more perspective. So we make the mistake and think, I'm a bad person, and it has the corresponding emotional and psychological impact. But with the lights on, we see the thought. We notice that when we make a mistake, we think, I'm a bad person. That thought doesn't make it the truth. So awareness of our thoughts is like having the lights on while we think. We're still having the same thoughts, but with the continuous awareness of them, we're not totally owned by them because we can see them for what they are. We have more perspective. They come and they go, they're just thoughts. When the lights are off, it's very easy to get sucked into something, into believing that our thoughts represent the absolute truth. Psychologists call this ability to step back from the content of our thoughts cognitive diffusion. And they consider it a much healthier mode of thinking than its opposite. What I find interesting is that this awareness seems to arise almost like a side effect of practicing meditation. By repeatedly focusing on the breath and noticing when our mind wanders, we naturally start to develop awareness of where our mind is and where it's going. So in becoming more aware of our thoughts and our personal patterns of thinking, we catch increasing glimpses of the fluid, impermanent, and transitory nature of everything, and the potential freedom and flexibility that comes with this kind of awareness. As you simply sit and acknowledge whatever arises in the mind without evaluation, judgment, or striving for certain outcomes, you develop greater stability of mind, greater capacity to let things be, and greater insight and compassion in daily life. So, as you become more aware of the stories you spin and the mental traps you set for yourself, you begin to disengage from them with greater ease. And you come back to the conclusion that thoughts are not necessarily fact or truth. So, what we notice about thoughts is they just seem to show up. Um, they can feel strong and powerful, and above all, they can feel convincing. They can also feel difficult and difficult to control. Often, the more we try to control or suppress a thought, the more the thought shows up. And thoughts can be sticky. They can stay with us for a really long time, sometimes years, coming up again and again. We can learn a new relationship to thoughts by relating to them as thoughts, mental reflexes that arise and pass away naturally. There's an exercise called Seeing Your Most Familiar Thoughts. And I love this exercise when I remember to do it. This is the kind of activity that helps you to recognize when this pattern is arising for you, such as this is my I can't stand my boss pattern, or this is no one recognizes how hard I work pattern. This in turn allows more space between you and your thought patterns. And with time, this can have a significant effect on how these patterns influence your experience. Your list can be thought patterns about yourself, about other people, about life in general, about the past, the future, about work, relationships, or health, hopes or fears or expectations or regrets. Your thought patterns can be mainly words, while others can be images or pictures in your mind. And sometimes it can just be a sense of meaning or attitude. They have so much potential to influence in different ways. So try this experiment during the day. Maybe do it a couple times a day. Simply watch the thoughts come and go in your field of awareness without feeling you have to follow them. Remind yourself to view the negative thoughts as mental events rather than facts. Write your thoughts down on paper. This helps to see them in a way that's less emotional and overwhelming. The pause between having the thought and writing it down provides an opportunity to take a wider perspective. And see if you recognize the thoughts as one of your top 10 unhelpful thinking patterns. So, stepping back from thought, and this is also from John Kabat-Zinn, he points out that it's remarkable how liberating it feels to be able to see that your thoughts are just thoughts and not you or reality. The simple act of recognizing your thoughts as thoughts can free you from the disoriented reality they often create and allow for more clear-sightedness and greater sense of manageability in your life. This liberation from the tyranny of the thinking mind comes directly out of the meditation practice itself. So when we spend some time each day in a state of non-doing, observing the flow of the breath and the activity of our mind and body without getting caught up in that activity, we're cultivating calmness and mindfulness hand in hand. As this mind develops stability and is less caught up in the content of thinking, we strengthen the mind's ability to concentrate and be calm. And if each time we recognize a thought as a thought, when it arises, and register its content and discern the strength of its hold on us, and the accuracy of the content, then each time we let go of it and come back to our breathing and a sense of our body, we're strengthening mindfulness. So we come to know ourselves better and become more accepting of ourselves, not as we would like to be, but as we actually are. So just noticing and letting go of your thoughts without judgment or evaluating these thoughts can free you from the constraints of constant worry and analyzing. This takes a lot of practice, but thankfully, learning to meditate can help. So I know that this is a lot to take in, and I will be sending the recording out, of course, after class. But this is a practice that every time I talk about it or research it, as I was researching it for this class, I realize more and more how much work I have to do myself. So it's a lifelong practice. Um, but I do see progress, and I think you will too, just by meditating and using the meditative practices like the one we're going to use, like the one we're getting ready to use. Um, so if everybody wants to just take a minute to get in a comfortable position, and we are going to sit for a little while. I'll guide you through it. So you really don't have to do anything except just listen to my guidance. You want to settle in, seated posture, keeping your back straight but not stiff. You can sit back in your chair, or you can sit towards the front of your chair if you want to without your back hitting the back of the chair. Whichever way you choose, just as long as it's upright. And you can do really whatever you want to with your hands. You can rest them on your thighs or lap. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze downward. Either one is fine, whatever's most comfortable for you. If you're just lowering your gaze, you're usually looking at a spot on the floor about 4 or 5 feet ahead of you, in front of you. So just take a couple of deep breaths. Now see if you notice the energy in the mind and the body. As you come into the period of mindfulness practice, you may notice the energy of your day resting in the mind and body. The mind may be active, the body may feel worked up, or you might notice a bit of lingering anxiety. Don't force yourself into calm or do anything other than feel your body sitting on the chair and your feet on the ground. Let all of this start happening slowly and organically. Slowly see if you can start to bring your attention to your breath. Just choose one spot where the breath is felt easily. It might be the center of your chest. Maybe it's the abdomen, the shoulders, or the nose. If you're having trouble feeling it, maybe place your hand on your belly and feel the rise and fall as you breathe. Just observe the physical sensation of the body breathing. When you find your mind starts to wander, just bring it back to the breath. Now I want you to think of a shaken snow globe with all that energy swirling around. As you start to gather your focus, imagine every snowflake as a thought. Now I want you to try and remember when you first came in to class. Would the snow globe have been energetically swirling, or was it more of a slow movement of snowflakes of thought? And what is it like now? What kind of energy are you sensing? Is there more activity, more swirling, or less? Or maybe it's about the same. And if you're having any trouble visualizing this, that's okay. Don't worry about it. There's no judgment. So now anchoring on your breath again and sticking with this snow globe visualization as thoughts begin to rise up. If you can, observe your thoughts without latching onto them. Try visualizing that you're letting some of the snowflakes slowly settle down as you let the thought go. Instead of returning to the breath when the mind wanders, notice what the mind is doing. You may notice yourself planning, fantasizing, figuring out, or replaying past experiences. Whatever you observe the mind doing, just let it be. When you recognize a thought, what happens? Try not to encourage the thought, but don't push it away either. Allow it to be and allow it to go on its own. See if you can watch the passing of the thought as it follows its natural course and leaves the mind. Return to the breath and patiently wait until another thought arises. Notice it, watch the thought, and come back to the breath again. So notice when you're lost in thought or when the mind wanders for some time. If self-judgment arises, notice that, just as you would any other thought. You can always return to the breath for a few moments to ground yourself back into the practice. You can do this anytime you need to. Perhaps you are repeatedly distracted by another sensation, emotion, or thought. If it seems particularly sticky, you can try labeling the experience, such as remembering, and then repeating to yourself, remembering, remembering. Or this is planning mind, and you say to yourself, planning, planning. If you're ever stuck for a name, just label it thinking, thinking. Simply labeling whatever your experience is in the moment, and then without judgment, returning your attention as you can to your breath. Notice how the first word brings your attention to thinking, and the second word allows you to experience it. Remember that meditation soothes anxiety by teaching us how to kindly distance ourselves from our thoughts. We don't have to believe everything we think. Practice letting go of thoughts by letting them come and go freely. So we focus on our breath, and when our thoughts take us away, we try to watch them as if from a distance, then label them, and then come back to the breath. You are not your thoughts, but the witness of these thoughts. Instead of the snow globe analogy, you might like to visualize your thoughts as if they are clouds or bubbles. A thought arises, it floats up and into our awareness. And then, if left alone, it will also float on by and dissipate or burst. Stay anchored to your breath as you play with this awareness of this process. Like clouds, like bubbles, understand that these thoughts are not solid, not fixed. They take shape and they break apart. They are continuously changing shape. Blown by the wind, they come and go. We cannot grasp at a cloud or a bubble, and neither is there any point in grasping at these thoughts. So let them be. Just remain aware of the breath as the thoughts do their thing. Try to avoid chasing or following or attaching to the thought. Avoid trying to stop thoughts or push them away. If you can, remain aware of the breath and aware of this state of being and not doing. Recall that you are not your thoughts, but their witness. Look upon each thought with curiosity or awe, but again and again, anchor back to the breath. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay. So you might want to stretch a minute or take a drink of water. We've got about 15 minutes or so. You can do some questions and answers, talk about your practice for the week or any questions you had about the talk or the meditation today. How was the sleepiness factor?
It was there.
It was there. It usually is, especially this time of day.
May I ask how long was this meditation? I lost track of time.
It was probably only about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Did it seem longer or shorter?
Felt like 20-ish.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It was only about 15.
Yeah. At some points of not, I mean, trying to be observer and not think of that much thoughts. Yeah, I was finding myself kind of falling asleep. Yeah. Since I was sitting, it was helping me not to fully fall asleep. Yeah, that also helped. Yeah, and I wanted to share before we had today's class, when I was trying to meditate before, uh, when I was starting to think something while meditating, I would start thinking about that thinking, and I would panic and start thinking about thinking, and just I'm like, God, now I cannot stop. This is just going and going, and yeah, but now today, since you said it's okay, you just don't push it, don't panic. So I think I felt better in today's meditation.
Good.
It didn't get accelerated, these thoughts.
Great. And you're actually becoming very aware of your thoughts. You're doing naturally, you're doing exactly what we want you to do in mindfulness. And meditation is going to train you in a way to do that naturally. So the fact that you experienced it while you were meditating is an example of that. And really, there's, the no judgment is probably one of the hardest things, that there's not a good or a bad thought. It's what we assign to it that's good or bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just paying attention to it and trying not to judge is really the awareness part, the challenging part.
Mhm.
So that's great. That's great that you were doing that.
Okay.
Does anybody
And
else want to? Yeah.
quickly, if also one more insight I had this week. When last week you recommended to meditate at least 1 minute per day, I thought, oh, that's easy. Like, who doesn't have a minute per day, right? But some days I was finding myself, it was already late night. I'm like, yeah, I didn't meditate today. I didn't think about it. So, and yeah, you get carried away with your routine and your life, and you don't even think about it. So I hope I will be more aware this weekend. Yeah, try to meditate at least 1 minute.
Yeah, just keep trying. the reason why we say it's better to sit for a short amount of time every day than sit 2 or 3 times a week, for a longer period of time is because we want you to get into almost the physical habit of sitting with the intention that you're going to meditate, just like we were talking before we started. And it really is just a matter of setting that intention for the day that at some point, just like you
Yeah.
said, because you can go through the whole day and completely forget about it. If I don't meditate in the morning, it doesn't happen because that's the only part of the day that I really have control over. After I leave the house, it's sort of everything else takes over. But I know some people don't have that luxury in the morning because of kids or whatever. But it is a good time to practice if you can.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to talk about the experience that they had while meditating? When I asked you to think about your thoughts, was it actually hard to come up with a thought? I know sometimes that actually happens.
Never difficult to come up with a thought. I'm always thinking. And I was very, very distracted by the top 10 unhelpful thinking patterns idea.
It's a very prolific thing.
I'm going to spend some non-meditative time thinking about that.
Yes, it's quite a it's quite a phenomenon to be aware of. And once you are aware of it, you can never undo that. You start seeing those habits come up that are so ingrained.
And in initially thinking about them, I think there's a pattern, like one unhealthy pattern triggers like the I hate my boss thinking pattern. I don't actually hate my boss, but there are many things about my job that I would change. And that sort of triggers this sort of domino effect of, oh, it ultimately ends up in something perhaps akin to, but not really, I'm miserable.
And I think that's if you sum up the whole talk that I did tonight, that's what we're trying to, I don't want to say roadblock, but the awareness of that first thought. Oh, that's the old, I hate my boss thought. And then if you stop there with that awareness, and then aware of the second thought, then it's not just a snowball that you have no control over. Ideally, takes a little practice.
Yes.
I'm still working that out.
It'll take a while, I'm sure, for me.
I think it's a lifelong practice, but the theory is extremely solid. And the meditation is what I should say, it happens naturally in meditation because you are being mindful of each step of the meditation, of each thought or each process. Every time that you recognize your thinking, you can stop and acknowledge what you're thinking and then go back to the breath. And then just repeat that pattern. So you start recognizing what those thoughts are that keep popping up. Mine usually have something to do with this is urgent, and it's usually with work. This is urgent and it has to happen today. So by the time I walk into my office, everything's urgent and it has to happen immediately. And if I challenge the idea that thoughts are not beliefs and they may not be true, then I can ideally stop the pattern. Ideally is the key word there. Can I ask who's on the phone? I'm just curious.
What was the question, sorry?
I'm just curious who's on the phone. It's a 404 number. It's fine if you are. I just wondered.
You mean using the phone for this meeting?
No, in our little pop-up windows, there's someone that's called in instead of logged in, and I was just curious who it was. Still unmute.
Is that me?
No, you're on the computer. I mean, you're logged in.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well. They're feeling shy tonight. That's okay. Well, I encourage you, especially with this particular meditation, is to try and use it this week. Whether you use it for the whole length, the 15 minutes, if you have it. If you don't, meditate for as long as you can. And see how many days you can do it. Again, I encourage you to sit every day, doing the best you can. Any other questions before we sign off?
I just saw a chat. Pony, like today at 5:02, wrote that she didn't receive a link to the recording from last week, and just right now, Nathaniel's iPad, he also wrote a message that it's him, and he didn't realize his audio isn't working on his phone. Just
okay. Thanks,
for your
Nathaniel.
information.
I was just curious more than anything because I'm trying to make sure I get the videos out to everybody that's in the class. So I had everybody's name.
And the thing is, it seems like my picture is kind of superimposed over the telephone, so the number was appearing under my picture. So that's why I thought it was me.
Oh no,
on
actually, what I see is Ron. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, on my screen it's like the number is like right under my picture, but this is not my 404 number.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're seeing your name, so it's good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, up in the right-hand corner, Ron, you can see a view icon, and you can change what you see on your screen. And I was just going to comment, Laura, that last week I was late and on my phone and couldn't figure out how to see everyone. So that's, I think last week my phone number showed.
Okay.
So that may have been what happened.
Yeah. Well, like I said, more than anything, I'm just trying to make sure everybody that shows up gets the link. So. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the meditation, and we will see you for walking meditation next week. Some of you may really enjoy this. So it's definitely a very old practice, as old as breathing meditation. And we'll just walk you through it. All right. Have a great week. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Connie, I'll resend you the link from last week.
Thanks, Lori.
All right. Thanks, Andrea.
I'm trying to see it. Oh, I see it now. Leave. I couldn't find it, Justin.
Have a good week.
All right.
Bye-bye.